Hello, and welcome to the Tower Coffee Hour. This is the first of what I hope is a great series of interviews with candidates for your vote in the Miller neighborhood of Texas. Our first candidate, and he came by my door and knocked on the door and asked for my vote, so I thought, hey, let's see if we can invite him back. He's come back, and this is Thomas J. Baker, and he's running for a judgeship that he already holds. And so he's just trying to hold on to it for another term. And it is in the Third Court of Appeals, Third District Court of Appeals. And this is place 5?
Yes, place 5.
Out of how many?
We have a Chief Justice and 5 justices, and the justices sit in 2, 3 justice panels.
Okay. So 3 of them are up for...
4 of us...
4 are up for election?
The 4 of us that were on the ballot in 2018 are up again because justices serve 6-year terms.
Okay. So,
but let me caveat that.
Please.
There are 4 justices whose terms are up again, but only 2 of those 4 have primaries or general election. I have a primary, and Justice Ed Smith has a primary. Justice Smith is another incumbent that ran with me in 18. And there are 2 ladies, Justice Gisela Triana and Justice Shari Kelly. Those 2 ran with Justice Smith and myself in 18. All 4 of us won, but Justice Triana and Justice Kelly have neither primaries nor general election opponents in this election cycle. So they are effectively re-elected to new terms in office.
Okay, that's there are a lot of things I can say about electing justices, Tom, but it's it's kind of crazy.
It's unusual because our court, I don't know how this came about exactly, but historically, in one election cycle, 4 out of 6 justices are on the ballot, and in the other 2 election cycles, 1 each.
Okay.
Our Chief Justice, Darlene Byrne, ran in 2020, and she defeated her Republican incumbent Chief Justice, Jeff Rose. And last year, Justice Rosa Theophanis, not last year, 2022, Justice Rosa Theophanis defeated her Republican challenger. Justice Melissa Goodwin retired and did not seek another term on the court, Justice Goodwin being the last Republican justice on our court.
Okay, so Tom, I want to ask a question. What impact does this position, this office, have on the residents of Miller?
It has a lot of impact, but it's just in the ordinary, everyday, matter-of-fact things that happen in a person's life. And let me give an example. In January, in succeeding weeks, I had 2 slip and fall accident cases. And in those 2 cases, the issue before the court was what's called sovereign immunity. The cases were, one case was against the city of Austin, and one case was involving Texas State University. Both plaintiffs in those 2 cases happened to be women who'd had accidents. One on a city of Austin street grate that broke through, and she had injury to a lower extremity, leg, and ankle. The Texas State case involved a stairwell with uneven stair levels. In both cases, the city of Austin and Texas State invoked what's called sovereign immunity to say they could not be sued. The trial courts disagreed and denied the governmental unit's claims of sovereign immunity, and we affirmed in each case in favor of the plaintiff having a right to go to trial on their claims. Now, those kind of things could happen to citizens here in Mueller, I'm sorry if I mess up the pronunciation, but I guess Mueller is how it comes off to my mind. In any event, those are things that could happen in your ordinary everyday life that could involve a government. Now, let me caveat that. In the last legislature, they created a new Court of Appeals called the 15th Court of Appeals that's going to go online on September 1st, 2024, with appointees of Governor Abbott, and they'll be elected statewide after the initial appointments to that court, and cases against government units will no longer be in our court. They will go to that court. So let me talk about something that could happen in our court. We review a lot of terminations of parental rights. Those are cases that usually involve or typically involve the Department of Family and Protective Services. And if somebody had a case where DFPS investigating a case of child abuse and neglect and it rose to a certain level, first point of contact with the legal system is the trial courts. And if those cases result in adverse decisions, they can be reviewed in the Third Court of Appeals. So those are some examples of cases that could wind up in an appeal in the Third Court of Appeals, but they always start in a trial court below us.
Okay, so you're an intermediate court between the Supreme Court and this regular local court, and that could be a city or county court that's a lower level?
We are an appellate court, yes.
Okay.
We are called an intermediate appellate court. Texas has 14 intermediate appellate courts.
15 now.
Yes, and a 15th going online in September 24.
Okay.
And we sit below the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is your highest civil court in Texas for civil appeals. The difference between them and us is we must hear all appeals that are brought to our court from one of the trial courts. We hear appeals from trial courts in 24 counties. The largest counties are easily Travis, and then Williamson, Bell County, and Hayes County. Those are the four largest, basically your I-35 corridor. And we must hear all cases that we have jurisdiction over, whereas the Supreme Court has what's called discretionary review. They just pick and choose cases. There's some cases they have to hear, but for the most part, they decide what appeals they'll hear if they think there's some issue of statewide jurisprudence or difference of intermediate courts. There is also a criminal court that's above us. That's the Court of Criminal Appeals. It's the highest criminal appellate court in Texas. Similarly, they have discretionary review, except death penalty cases where death has been imposed must automatically go directly to that court and bypass our court and the other intermediate courts.
Okay. So it's very convoluted. You don't want to get involved in this as a citizen,
Right. Right.
and so okay. So that's where you are. The next question. Let me do this. I've been wondering, hearing all this going on and everything, talking with Tom, is why would anybody want to do this? Why would anybody want to be a judge in the Court of Appeals, where you're an intermediate, you're hearing trials that have already happened, you're possibly passing them on to the Supreme Court? Why would you want to do that? And I'm going to assume that in Texas we don't pay judges all that much. So let's ask Tom. Tom, why is it that you want this job?
Okay. I have to go back to 2018 to answer your question. Back in 2018, and a year or two before that, I filed, before I was elected to the court, I had maybe 15 to 20 cases that I had in this court. And I had a couple of decisions that I disagreed with very strongly, and they were decided by the Justice David Puryear, whom I ran against. And it appeared to me, the court was all Republican back in 2016 and 2018. 2016, Justice Melissa Goodwin, the last Republican, ran without a Democratic opponent. it appeared to me that the justices, the four Republicans that were on the ballot in 18, were not going to have Democratic opponents. In particular, it looked like Justice Puryear was going to get a pass, that no Democrat was coming forward to run. In fact, uh, only four of us ran for four places on the ballot, but I decided that I would go out and get signatures and get on the ballot. Why? Because in this one of these appeals that was decided adversely to my client, and these clients affected whom I represented were all women, but one in particular was a woman who was denied her interest in her former spouse's military retirement rights, and it was devastating to my client, and I thought the result was incorrect. I decided if no other Democrat was going to step up, I was going to give it a shot, even though to be honest, I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was scared and I was basically feeling like I didn't have much of a chance. But I threw my hat in the ring, got the signatures to get on the ballot, and I ran because I thought it was the right thing to do. Now, why am I running again in 24? It's because at the beginning I had a learning curve. I think I cleared my learning curve. I think I have valuable experience now. I think I have democratic values that when the law and the case record allows me to apply, I know how to apply my values without legislating from the bench. Nobody wants judges to be acting like the legislature or the governor. We're a separate branch of government, and we need to know where our place is. But I practice my values, but I don't. But I follow the law, and I try to interpret the law faithfully. I try to treat all people with equality, dignity, and respect. And the justice I ran against in 18, I thought in some of his opinions, he was gratuitously insulting in the opinions. In sentences in the opinion, there was unnecessary uh, offensive language. And I set out when I ran to write opinions that were respectful and treated all people with dignity. And and I think I've adhered to those principles, and I will faithfully do my job. I think I'm doing a good job, and the last 2 years I've been fifth out of 80 in opinions.
I just unplugged everything. Sorry. Not your fault. There we go. All right, we're going back on